The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. This is Adnan Branbo, and this is a new episode of AVIAPRENEURS podcast. Today I have with me a very special aviapreneur from Ethiopia, from Africa, Mr. Dawit Lemma from Crimson Aviation. Good day, Dawit. How are you doing?
Good day, Adnan. Thank you. I'm well, thanks. Thank you for this opportunity to partake in this wonderful podcast.
You are more than welcome. Very happy to have you with me today. So Dawit, you are an aviapreneur with more than 20 years of experience in the aviation industry. That's amazing to have 20 years of experience at this age. I really admire that. And what I admire more is that you have worked for an FBO, for an airport, for an airline, for an aviation logistics company, for an aviation magazine, for an aviation non-for-profit organization. That's amazing. And recently you started Crimson Aviation a couple of years ago. You're currently also one of the board members of AfBAA, the African Business Aviation Association. And to my surprise, last week, you told me that you also fly airplanes. Wow, that's impressive. How can you do all that?
Well, I think I'd have to say it started when I was very young. I fell in love with airplanes at a very young age. And in fact, when I was 7 years old, I remember I told my parents that when I grow up, I wanted to be a cowboy or a pilot. And my parents told me that cowboy was not a good career choice. So from the age of 7, very, very much fell in love with aviation. And as soon as I was in university, my first year, I started my PPL training and my AMP mechanics license. And then I just started doing internships. But I realized the more and more I studied aviation, the more I loved aviation and not just piloting. So I was, maybe when I was 18 years old, I decided that I wanted to do as much as possible in aviation. Whether it was an internship or job, I took whatever, I just took whatever I could. So I was very purposeful in making sure that I had a very broad experience across the sector and across many countries as well. And yeah, it has served me well because it gives me a different perspective. When I was flying, I knew what the ground handlers and ATC were doing. When I was a mechanic, I knew what was happening in the marketing department, et cetera, et cetera. So it has served me well having a very broad experience.
So that changing of jobs from one company to another was done on purpose. You actually purposefully joined multiple companies and you change jobs from one to another so you can see the full picture and work in the whole supply chain of the aviation industry. Is this correct?
Correct, yes.
That's amazing. It's really a well-designed career. We rarely see someone who really designed his career in such a way.
Thank you.
Did that benefit you when you set up Crimson Aviation?
Oh, absolutely. When we started Crimson, we started just as a flight support company. But my experience at TAG Aviation as a ground handling agent really helped me understand what we were doing. But also it gave me I'd say maybe not gave me, but it prevented me from having limits on what I wanted to do with Crimson. And I was able to grow in my field or in my role, be able to do multiple jobs. As you know, when you start a company, you're an entrepreneur, you have to be the CEO, the finance manager, the admin manager, the operations manager. You have to do everything yourself.
Believe me, you have to do even much more. I remember 6 years ago when I started my business, I put a small drawing on LinkedIn of the jobs and functions of a company founder. And I draw it and include basic jobs like cleaning, taking mail. And I put that post on LinkedIn. And it's the post I have the most like and comments on LinkedIn. It has more than 5,000 interactions. So yes, you have to do many things. Many people related to that post. So I can imagine what you said.
Exactly. I think my favorite was what you just said. My favorite was cleaning my office. You're absolutely right. You have to clean your office. If I have a potential client coming into the office, running around, okay, I got to make sure the office is clean. But yeah, I think having a very broad perspective definitely allowed me to become an entrepreneur and to be able to manage the growth of the company, but also give me vision and insights to be able to grow the company. But also on the other side, outside of the company, it allowed me to be able to participate, like you mentioned earlier, AfBAA and other organizations, or in civil aviation meetings or meetings with Ethiopian Airlines, and understand their role, understand what other people were talking about. So it allowed me to be, I guess you'd say, I wouldn't say an expert voice, but at least I was able to carry my own weight in the conversations, which allowed me to garner respect from my colleagues and clients, suppliers, and vendors, and that really did, I would say, help build the reputation and the brand of Crimson.
So, looking at your career, I noted also that this experience have benefited you in launching businesses in other industries. I noted that you have a marketing company, and recently, to my surprise and interest, I noted on social media that you have posted that you are starting a bank. That's very impressive.
Correct. Not that I don't have enough time, but so, I mean, marketing was always a passion. It's actually a second passion that I developed actually when I was doing my master's. And I would say it started off as a hobby or for fun. And then I was able to transform that into a business in parallel with Crimson. As you know, of course, with Crimson, we have to do our own marketing and branding, et cetera, et cetera. And fortunate enough, actually the biggest experience for me was when I was working just a couple of years before I started Crimson for Salamta magazine, which is the in-flight magazine for Ethiopian Airlines. I was head of sales and the business development manager there. And that really, I'd say, gave me the professional skills in marketing, and I was able to translate that into actual a business. Also, from a functional perspective, when I started Crimson, you know, we had one client, and so that wasn't enough to pay the rent. So I'd also offer marketing services to non-aviation clients to counterbalance, so just make sure that we had enough money to pay the rent and put food on the table, as they say. And then that just grew naturally. And as I grew my team and my staff, we actually ended up splitting the company and having a completely separate marketing company and a completely separate aviation service company. And that's really grown. The bank, I think I would say that the bank was something that was proposed to me, actually. I was nominated. These people approached me. The founders, the initial founders of the bank approached me to participate because, you know, I guess my reputation and the work that we've done here in Ethiopia kind of spread out, and people, I guess people said, this is someone that we need on the board to give a different perspective and add more experience, but also kind of, I think, my international experience as well, having been born in Ethiopia and lived all over the world. I think that also was a value add for the founders of the bank. And yeah, it's going to be a busy 2022.
So you're actually fulfilling the post you shared on social media at the beginning of the year, that 2022 is going to be a great year for you.
Yes, I'm very, very excited. We have very large or ambitious growth plans, and you know, I've taken on more staff. We've moved into a larger office, and things are looking up on the aviation side. You know, with Crimson, also with Simply Black, the advertising agency, and of course this new bank. So I'm quite excited.
I wish you the very best. So, having experience in all these functions and business models in the aviation industry, which one is more near to your heart? I mean, did you like more working for an airline or an airport, or for an aviation magazine, or for an industry association? Which one you really, or flying, which one you really like and love more?
You know, for me, it's actually quite easy. I love ground handling. For some reason, I'm very, I appreciated my experience at TAG, because that's where I learned a lot. learned quite a lot actually while I was there. But I think it's just something about also my character. I'm a people person. I love to serve, and I like to provide excellent service, whether that's hosting dinners at our home for friends and family, or socializing outside with friends, but even professionally, ground handling for business aviation, business and general aviation, corporate aviation, etc. It excites me because you are challenged, one, to provide the highest level of service that you can, ground handling and flight support combined. So it's just part of my nature. You're serving people, giving service, and giving good service. And that's something that I enjoy to do personally. So professionally, I like it. And yeah, and I think also professionally, from ground handling also has an element of different, coordination, and you're dealing with, from permits to air traffic control to maintenance, and they're dealing with pilots. So it also aligns with kind of my career history in terms that it's very well rounded. It gives you an opportunity to touch different aspects of aviation.
Having mentioned that you like hosting friends for dinner, I look forward to your invitation addressed to
Absolutely.
me to join you in your next dinner whenever possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. Please, you're more than welcome, sir.
So you mentioned that TAG Aviation is one of the companies you really enjoyed working for. Do you think it's going to be easy for you to move TAG Aviation experience to Addis Ababa? Do you think one day you will be able to really set up a general aviation terminal, an FBO in Addis Ababa airport?
I think from a bricks and mortar physical infrastructure, there will be challenges with that. That's possible. Now, I think anywhere in the world, but especially in Africa, the service levels are what really matters when you're an FBO. And for me, TAG Aviation set the standard. I mean, I remember in 2006 when I was there, we were voted FBO of the year in Europe. So that is a standard that's been set for us. Of course, that's a vision and a goal I hope to achieve. But that will come with its challenges, cultural challenges, professional challenges. But I aim. There's a saying: you shoot for the stars and you will land on the moon. And I think that even if we're able to reach halfway the standards that I learned and was able to apply during my time at TAG, I think we'll be in a good place here. But yes, I aim on it, I target it, but a lot of work to get there.
I wish you the best. So talking about challenges, Dawit Lemma is very active in Africa through Crimson or through AfBAA, the African Business Aviation Association, which means you really know a lot about the African continent. In your opinion, what are the most challenges that face companies willing to do business in Africa? And at the same time, what are the opportunities there?
I think the first one is what I mentioned earlier about the cultural challenges, especially if it's a European or a North American, or even a company coming from Dubai. There are expectations. I think the expectations of professional standards are not there yet. I think it will take some time. But on the other side, of course, there are some cultural advantages. The way things are done, the genuineness of people, and the willingness of people to work is wonderful here on the continent. But I definitely believe that expectations and standards, unfortunately, are a little bit lower in Africa. So those need to be raised a little bit. Also, purely just from education and experience level and awareness level, that's a challenge. But I would say the biggest challenge is definitely financing. A lot of countries in Africa don't have access to finance or provisions for financing unless you're in a critical sector, such as road infrastructure or telecom infrastructure or export. So there are a few sectors that are critical sectors that are I'd say easier to work in Africa. However, a sector like ours, business aviation, is not considered a critical sector, unfortunately. So opportunities and access to finance are very difficult. But on the opportunity side, I mean, Africa is, I mean, fastest growing economies in the world, a very, very large population, over 1 billion people. Majority of that is youth. And I think the greatest opportunity there is you have an entire generation of youth who have surpassed the old legacy systems. The story of Ethiopia and many countries in Africa. We've gone from the fixed phone, the rotary dial, straight to the mobile phone. We skipped computers. So the fact that those legacy systems and what holds you back or holds systems back are not going to be there. So adoption of new technologies, new systems, new methods will be easier. And you have a very, like I said, a very large, young, very talented population on the continent. And then, of course, the resources are here, natural resources are here. So I think if the political ambiguity on the continent would create structures and systems in place to take advantage of what's available, whether that's human resource or actual natural resource, I think the continent will be very wealthy. Maybe even in my generation, but at least my kids hopefully will see Africa at its peak.
You really have very good understanding of the continent. I appreciate the brief you have given us. It's very thoughtful and it's very meaningful, actually. So you're born in Ethiopia, you studied in the US, and before that you lived in Zambia, and then you went to Switzerland to work there. Then you took all this international experience and you moved back to your home country in Ethiopia. How beautiful it is to set up your first aviation business in your home country. Did you really intend to do that? Did you really wanted to move this international experience to Ethiopia, knowing that the country needs a lot of experience in that area?
I would say initially no, but the more I grew in my career, and then also, of course, seeing the continent, in the early mid 2000s, Africa itself was growing. So it was especially Ethiopia. After 2005, the economy started turning the corner. And luckily, also my father had retired, so he moved back to Ethiopia in 2007. So I was able to come back and see the country and see the growth. And it was that marriage of having, actually for it to be physically possible and seeing the opportunities, actually seeing with my own eyes the growth and the opportunities in Ethiopia, that made me realize, or it was like I think it was in 2007, it was like a aha moment. I said, wow, there's a lot of potential here. And that marinated for a little while. It took a few years for me to move back. But when I did make that decision, I did come back with that perspective that I want to come back to Ethiopia and give and return all the international experience that I had to help the country and the Ethiopian people grow. So there was that sense of I do want to do my part, as they say. And ironically, around the time I moved in 2012, there was a huge movement within the Ethiopian diaspora of my generation who were feeling the same thing. They'd seen the same thing, the potential, and then they kind of had that, I guess, that patriotic feeling that some was deeply buried somewhere that came out. So, across sectors, I have friends who are lawyers, doctors, bankers, businessmen, just a wide array of sectors, careers, all over the world, from North America to Asia, and, Middle East, Europe, other countries in Africa, and all came back and said, okay, we want to do something. And like myself, a lot of us started working professionally for companies, and then have all actually become entrepreneurs, launched our own businesses.
Very impressive. So you believe in corporate social responsibility. You believe in giving back the society who has really contributed to your success. And recently you mentioned, I noted on your social media account that you actually gave a scholarship to the university you actually studied in the US. Can you share with us some of your views about that initiative?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's probably my proudest achievement for me to date, being able to create a scholarship. So the scholarship is for women and minorities to study aviation at Purdue. That's where I studied, and it's an answer or a call to a statistic that I read that seriously disturbed me a few years ago. That stated that in the U.S. only 3% of the skilled labor force, so licensed, whether it's mechanics or the actual skilled labor force, only 3% in the United States are minorities and women. And I said, oh no, that's that's not good. So after conversations with colleagues, friends, I said, I need to do something. So I said, let me go back and where it all started. And also even my personal experience at Purdue. I mean, if in a classroom of 100 students, I would be the only minority, and there may be one or two other females in the class. So it was like I said, a call to not only a professional dilemma, but a personal experience that I had. So in October, when we launched the scholarship, it's a $100,000 endowment for two students to study at the School of Aviation. I was actually quite emotional during the speech or the launching event, because it was actually right next to the hangar where I was studying. And yeah, like I said, it's definitely one of the most proudest achievements personally, but again, also professionally. I think it's also doing our part to make sure that the labor force, the aviation labor force in the United States and around the world definitely has a little bit more diversity.
I very much like this. It's very inspiring indeed. Before we close, Dawit, thank you very much for the time today and all the insightful experience and knowledge you have shared with all the listeners of AVIAPRENEURS podcast. I'm sure everyone of these aviapreneurs listening to us is interesting to listen to your advice and recommendation of what they should do when they start their own aviation business. What recommendation do you give them all?
Oh, it's very simple. One is just accepting that failure is part of success. That's you have to go in and things are not going to work out. And I think that's applicable to any entrepreneur. Be willing to learn. That's one. Two is develop your network, especially in Africa. And I'm sure it's the same across the world, but especially in Africa. Your network is the value of the company at the very beginning. And that's how you build the company up, through networks. And sometimes I'm not just talking about like professional networks in terms of contracts or agreements or client vendor relationships. Just people. Get to know people in your sector, people who might not work in business aviation. Some of my closest colleagues in my network are quality assurance managers or a lawyer, an aviation lawyer. That's actually one of my closest friends. So these people, like I said, are going to be the value of your company at the very beginning, because that's how you're going to expand your services, through referrals. And then another one I would say is just write your goals down. Write down exactly what you want to accomplish, and look at your goals. And this is something you read here and there in every book, and you hear in every self-help sessions, etc. But it really does work. Writing your goals down, having and not I would say your goals and your vision. You don't have to write out a business plan, but put down what you want, because every day when you look at that, it'll help. In the morning, it'll help you guide you to what you need to do that day. But even on the bad days, at the end of the day, when you look at that piece of paper, it helps you pick yourself back up, saying, okay, at least I did one thing today, or I'm still on track. Today was a horrible day, but over the course of the week, we're moving in the right direction. Being able to tell yourself, I'm moving in the right direction, it helps. And over, like I said, it helps you with the most valuable lesson, understanding that failure is part of success.
So accepting failures, expanding your network, and writing your goals down. Thank you very much, Dawit. I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to meeting you next time in person.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you to all the aviapreneurs out there in the world listening to us today. I look forward to meeting you again next week. I hope you find this episode and this talk with Dawit as inspiring and as interesting as I have found it. Have a great day. See you next week.